The massive coalition warship Hegemony's Pride drifted silently through the void above Earth's scarred surface. Inside its ceremonial chamber, representatives from 12 alien species watched as humanity's final moment of defeat unfolded before them. The room smelled of ozone and fear, thick with the weight of 3 years of brutal warfare finally coming to an end. Admiral Kim Subin stood at the center of the chamber, her uniform torn and blood-stained from the final battle at Lunar Station. Her hands shook as she reached for the surrender documents that lay spread across the polished metal table. The pages seemed to glow under the harsh alien lighting, each word a nail in humanity's coffin. The Terran Defense Force hereby surrenders unconditionally to the coalition of civilized worlds. She spoke into the quantum transmitter, her voice barely steady. The words traveled instantly across space, reaching every human colony, every space station, every hidden outpost where survivors huddled in fear. All military operations will cease immediately. All human forces will lay down their weapons and submit to coalition authority. Behind her, Coalition Admiral Vextara S. insectoid features twisted into what might have been a smile. Her mandibles clicked together in rhythm, a sound that meant satisfaction in her species. The war that had consumed 3 years and countless lives was finally over. Humanity, with all their primitive violence and stubborn resistance, had been broken at last. But far below, deep beneath the smoking ruins of Seoul, something else was beginning. Dr. Park Jin-woo sat in a chair that had not moved from its position. In 6 months, his eyes were fixed on a small green light that had remained dark throughout the entire war. Now, as Admiral Kim's words echoed through the hidden speakers, that light began to blink. The signal he had been waiting for had finally arrived. His fingers moved across the hidden console with practiced precision. Row after row of switches flipped from red to green. Computer screens that had shown nothing but standby messages for years suddenly burst to life with streams of data. Around him, his team of scientists stopped their work and turned to watch. These men and women had survived the bombing of Seoul, had worked in secret while their world burned above them, had spent 3 years perfecting something that would change everything. The war is over, Jinwoo whispered to his assistant, Lee, Hannah, who stood beside him with tears in her eyes. Now we begin. The underground facility stretched 4 kilometers beneath the ruined city. What had once been subway tunnels and parking garages had been transformed into something far more complex. Laboratories lined the walls, filled with equipment that looked like it belonged in a medical facility. But the things growing in the tanks and pods scattered throughout the chambers were not quite human anymore. Hannah wiped her eyes and moved to the main control panel. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, checking systems that had been dormant for months. All subjects show stable vital signs, she reported. Genetic modifications are holding steady. Cybernetic implants are functioning within normal parameters. In the darkness of the facility, hundreds of pods began to hum with activity. The creatures inside had once been human volunteers, brave souls who had agreed to undergo procedures that would change them forever. Scientists had worked on them for 2 years, altering their DNA, installing microscopic machines in their bodies, training their minds to think in ways that pure humans could not. Above ground, coalition forces were already moving through Earth's major cities. Their ships landed in precise formations, disgorging soldiers who expected to find a broken population ready to submit to their rule. They had conquered 17 worlds before Earth, and each time the pattern had been the same. Defeat led to despair, despair led to acceptance, and acceptance led to peaceful occupation. They had studied human behavior during the war, of course. Humans were violent, unpredictable, and surprisingly clever for such a primitive species, but they were also emotional, driven by fear and anger rather than cold logic. The coalition had learned to use these weaknesses against them, turning human emotions into weapons that destroyed their own forces. What they had not learned was that humans were also capable of patience. For 3 years, while Earth's fleets fought and died in space, the Darwin Project had continued in secret. While cities burned and colonies fell, scientists had worked to create something new. They had studied captured coalition soldiers, learned their weaknesses, understood their fears. Every piece of alien technology that fell into human hands had been analyzed, reverse-engineered, and improved upon. The coalition believed they had won a war against humanity. They had no idea they were about to face something that was no longer entirely human. In the hidden chambers beneath Seoul, the first of the Darwin subjects began to stir. His name had been Choi Woo-jin before the transformation, but names meant little now. What mattered was what he had become. Faster than any human, stronger than any human, and capable of thinking in ways that would make the Coalition's greatest strategists seem like children. The war was over, just as Admiral Kim had announced, but another kind of conflict was about to begin, one that would teach the galaxy what humanity truly meant when they refused to surrender. Coalition Administrator Calvados stood at the window of his temporary headquarters in what had once been Seoul's City Hall. 8 months had passed since the human surrender, and he should have been preparing to hand control over to a permanent governor. Instead, he found himself staring at reports that made no sense. His 3 eyes moved across the data screens that covered his desk. Human compliance rates were at 97%, higher than any species the Coalition had ever conquered. Work quotas were being met ahead of schedule. There had been no major riots, no terrorist attacks, no organized resistance movements. By every measure that mattered, the occupation was a complete success. So why did his security chief look so worried every morning? The humans are too quiet, Major Ziegfen had told him just that morning. They watch us all the time. Even when they're working, even when they're sleeping, they're watching us. My soldiers are starting to have nightmares. Calvados had dismissed the report as typical paranoia from a species that had evolved as prey animals. But now, looking down at the humans moving through the streets below, he began to understand what his security chief meant. They moved with purpose. These defeated creatures, they gathered in small groups that scattered whenever Coalition patrols approached. They worked their assigned jobs with mechanical precision. But their eyes never stopped moving. Far beneath the administrator's feet. In tunnels that the Coalition mapping teams had somehow missed, Dr. Lee Hanna made her way through the underground network that connected half the city. The abandoned subway system had become a highway for the resistance, allowing them to move unseen beneath their occupiers. She carried a small medical bag and a datapad that showed the locations of 17 different safe houses. In each location, volunteers from the Darwin Project waited in specially designed chambers, their bodies sustained by machines while their enhanced systems slowly came online. The plan had been to keep them sleeping for 2 more months, but recent events were forcing her to reconsider the timeline. Jung Minho met her at the entrance to the old Busan metro station. The former Marine had lost his left arm in the final battle for Earth, but his remaining hand still moved with the deadly precision that had made him one of Korea's most decorated soldiers. His face was hard as stone when he spoke. They lost another patrol last night, he reported, leading her deeper into the tunnels. 3 soldiers, all veterans of the Centauri campaign, found them this morning with their necks broken. No signs of a struggle, no weapon marks, just dead. Hannah frowned as she checked her datapad. That makes 17 Coalition deaths in the past month. Are you sure it's not normal resistance activity? Minho stopped walking and turned to face her. Doc, I've been fighting for 15 years. I know what resistance kills look like. These aren't resistance kills. These soldiers died like they were hunted by something that knew exactly how to kill their species, something that studied them first. They continued through the tunnels in silence, passing groups of civilians who had found shelter in the underground maze. Children played quietly in side chambers while their parents worked to maintain the hidden generators that kept the lights on. Everyone they passed nodded respectfully to Hannah, but their eyes held a strange mixture of hope and fear. The first safe house contained 3 Darwin subjects, each one floating in a tank filled with blue liquid that kept their modified bodies stable during the transformation process. Hannah checked their vital signs on her portable scanner, noting that all 3 showed higher brain activity than expected. They're supposed to be unconscious, she murmured, studying the readings, but their neural patterns suggest they're processing information almost like they're learning while they sleep. The second safe house showed similar readings. The third was even more concerning. Subject 7, who had been one of the first volunteers for the Darwin Project, showed brain patterns that were completely off the charts. His body, once that of a simple factory worker named Choi Woo-jin, had been transformed over 2 years of careful genetic modification and cybernetic enhancement. Dr. Minho said quietly, I think we need to move faster than planned. Before Hannah could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the tunnel system. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as automated voices echoed through the chambers. Coalition patrol detected. All personnel to hiding positions. Coalition patrol detected. But in the deepest chamber beneath the city, Subject 7 was no longer sleeping. His eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that glowed with soft blue light. The enhanced optical systems that had replaced his original eyes immediately began analyzing his surroundings, processing information faster than any human brain could handle. His hearing, amplified by microscopic implants, picked up the sound of coalition boots moving through the streets 6 meters above him. His enhanced nervous system automatically catalogued the rhythm of their march, the weight distribution that revealed their species, the slight variations that indicated individual soldiers. In seconds, he had created a complete tactical picture of the patrol without ever seeing them. The machines that had kept him unconscious registered his awakening and began their automatic shutdown sequence. Nutrient tubes withdrew from ports in his arms. Monitoring cables disconnected from contact points along his spine. Subject 7 sat up slowly, his modified muscles adjusting to gravity with fluid precision. The occupation was about to discover that humanity's surrender had been only the first move in a much larger game. The Coalition patrol moved through the ruins of downtown Seoul with practiced efficiency. Sergeant Velkaris led his squad of 6 soldiers through the debris streets, their advanced sensors sweeping for signs of human resistance activity. They had done this same route dozens of times over the past 8 months, and it had always been routine. Nothing about this morning felt routine. Velkaris stopped his squad at the intersection of 2 collapsed buildings, his mandibles clicking nervously as he studied his scanner readings. Contact ahead, he whispered into his comm unit. Single human, approximately 50 meters north. The figure stood perfectly still in the shadows between 2 concrete slabs. It appeared to be a man, dressed in the simple work clothes that most humans wore during the occupation. He seemed to be waiting for something, though his posture suggested no threat. Move to surround, Velkaris ordered. His soldiers spread out in a standard formation, their weapons trained on the motionless human. You there, identify yourself. The man turned toward them, and Velkaris felt his blood freeze. The human's eyes glowed with a soft blue light that had no place in any natural creature. When he smiled, his teeth seemed too sharp, too white. I am Subject 7, the man said in perfect Coalition standard. I have been waiting for you. What happened next lasted less than 10 seconds, but the security cameras mounted on nearby buildings captured every impossible moment. The human moved like liquid shadow, covering the 50-meter distance in what seemed like a single bound. Velk tried to fire his weapon, but his target was no longer where his eyes said it should be. The first soldier died before he could scream. The second managed to trigger his emergency beacon, but the signal died as claws that had once been human fingernails opened his throat. By the time the remaining soldiers understood they were not fighting a human anymore, it was too late for any of them. Subject 7 stood among the bodies, his enhanced senses already analyzing the chemical composition of Coalition blood, the structural weaknesses of their armor, the frequencies of their communication equipment. This information flowed through quantum-encrypted channels to his fellow Darwin subjects, adding to a growing database of enemy vulnerabilities, 3,000 kilometers away. In the ruins of Tokyo, Song Yujin felt the new data arrive in her consciousness like a whispered secret. She had awakened only hours before, her body still adjusting to the modifications that had transformed her over 2 years of careful engineering. The air around her was thick with radiation and industrial poison, but her enhanced respiratory system adapted within minutes, filtering toxins that would have killed a normal human in seconds. Through her modified eyes, she watched a Coalition reconnaissance team moving through the rubble of what had once been Shibuya. There were 4 of them, a different species than the one Subject 7 had encountered. These were taller, with gray skin and elongated limbs, that suggested they had evolved in low gravity. Their movements were careful and precise, but Song Yujin could see the patterns now, could predict where they would step before they knew it themselves. Her skin began to shift color, matching the concrete and twisted metal around her. The change was not like a chameleon's slow adaptation, but rapid and complete, as if her body was made of living liquid. Within seconds, she had become invisible against the urban wasteland. The first alien never saw her coming. The second managed to raise his weapon before her enhanced reflexes made his response meaningless. The third and fourth tried to run, but Song Yujin's modified muscles propelled her forward with inhuman speed. She had been a kindergarten teacher before the war, gentle and kind. Now she was something else entirely. In the Amazon basin, Kite stalked through the dense jungle that had grown over the ruins of Manaus. His skin had adapted to match not just the colors around him, but the textures as well. When he pressed against a tree trunk, his flesh took on the appearance of bark. When he moved through tall grass, his body seemed to flow like wind-blown vegetation. The Coalition team he followed consisted of scientists rather than soldiers. sent to study the rapid plant growth that had consumed the bombed city. They had no idea they were being hunted by something that could read their body language, predict their movements, and strike from any angle without warning. Coalition Commander the Kronos received the first reports while reviewing occupation statistics in his orbital command center. 3 patrols had gone silent in the past 6 hours. Security footage from Sol showed images that his analysts insisted had to be fake. No living creature could move that fast, could strike with such precision, could vanish so completely. These cannot be the same species we defeated, he told his staff, his voice tight with growing fear. Humans don't possess these capabilities. Their biology is too primitive, their reflexes too slow. But deep beneath the ruins of Seoul, Dr. Park Jin-woo watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Each red dot represented a Darwin subject coming online. Each flash of data showed another successful engagement with coalition forces. His creations were not just fighting the enemy, they were learning from every encounter, sharing knowledge, through quantum encrypted neural networks that connected their enhanced minds. They're not the same species, he murmured to Lee Hanna, who stood beside him monitoring the awakening process. They're what humanity becomes when we stop pretending to be civilized. The occupation had lasted 8 months. The real war was just beginning. The abandoned office building in central Seoul had been empty for 9 months, its windows blown out by orbital bombardment and its floors covered with debris. Coalition Command had marked it as cleared and safe, just another piece of urban wreckage that posed no threat to their patrols. They were wrong. Yoon Tae-young clung to the ceiling of the 14th floor like a spider made of human flesh and advanced technology. His enhanced muscle fibers had locked into position 3 hours ago, holding him motionless against the concrete overhead while his modified circulatory system adjusted his body temperature to match the cold air around him. To any scanner, he was invisible. To any eye, he was just another shadow among many. Below him, a coalition patrol of 8 soldiers moved through the rubble with weapons ready. These were not the casual patrols of the early occupation, when alien forces had walked Earth's streets with confidence. These soldiers moved like prey animals, their heads constantly turning, their formation tight and defensive. They had learned to be afraid. Tae-young's enhanced hearing picked up every word of their nervous chatter, his cybernetic language processors translating their speech in real time. They were talking about the missing patrols, about the bodies found drained of blood, about the reports of creatures that moved like ghosts and struck like lightning. Some of the soldiers thought they were fighting human terrorists with stolen technology. Others whispered that Earth's survivors had made deals with demons. Both groups were wrong, but not by much. The patrol leader, a veteran sergeant with scars from the Centauri Wars, raised his hand to halt the group. His thermal scanner was picking up something unusual. A cold spot in the ceiling that didn't match the building's heat patterns. Smart soldiers learned to trust their equipment, even when their eyes saw nothing dangerous. Tae-young smiled in the darkness above them. The sergeant's caution would buy his unit perhaps 30 seconds of extra life. It would not save them. His enhanced nervous system had already analyzed every aspect of the patrol during their 3-hour hunt through the building. He knew which soldiers were left-handed, which ones favored their right leg when they turned, which communication frequencies they used for emergency signals. His cybernetic implants had recorded their equipment signatures, their movement patterns, their psychological responses to stress. More importantly, this information was already flowing through quantum-encrypted channels to 43 other Darwin subjects scattered across the planet. Every tactical decision, every piece of equipment, data, every biological weakness was shared instantly among the enhanced humans who had once been factory workers, teachers, and office clerks. The coalition had spent 3 years studying humanity. During the war, learning their weaknesses and exploiting their emotions. Now humanity was returning the favor with compound interest. Tae-young released his grip on the ceiling and dropped silently toward the patrol below. His enhanced reflexes calculated the exact angle needed to strike the sergeant first, disrupting the unit's command structure before they could react. His modified skeleton absorbed the impact of landing without making a sound, his artificial muscles coiling like springs to launch him at the nearest target. The sergeant died with his finger on the trigger of his communicator, the emergency signal dying half-formed in his throat. The soldier beside him had time to register surprise before enhanced claws opened his chest cavity with surgical precision. The third alien managed to fire his weapon, but Tae-young was no longer where the muzzle flash illuminated. One by one, The patrol members felt as something that moved too fast to track and struck with knowledge that seemed impossible. Each death provided more data about Coalition anatomy, more understanding of their combat responses, more intelligence to share with the growing network of enhanced predators. When the last alien stopped breathing, Taeyong stood motionless in the center of the carnage and transmitted his final report: equipment specifications, communication protocols, biological vulnerabilities, psychological profiles, all of it flowed through the quantum network to his fellow hunters. Tomorrow, 43 other patrols would face enemies who knew exactly how to kill them most efficiently. Admiral Vexthura received the casualty reports while reviewing withdrawal plans in her flagship's command center. In the past month, Coalition forces had lost over 200 soldiers to what the survivors described as impossible attacks by impossible creatures. Entire patrols vanished without sending distress signals. Bodies were found arranged in patterns that suggested their killers understood Coalition funeral rites better than most Coalition citizens. "We're not fighting humans anymore," she transmitted to Coalition High Command, her mandibles clicking with suppressed panic. "These things know us better than we know ourselves. They anticipate our tactics, counter our standard procedures, and exploit weaknesses we didn't know we had." The response from command was predictable: requests for more detailed reports, demands for proof, suggestions that her forces were simply facing well-trained terrorists. But Vexthura had been a soldier for 30 years, had conquered 6 worlds for the Coalition. She knew the difference between fighting an enemy and fighting something that had been specifically designed to hunt you, deep beneath the ruins of Seoul. Dr. Lee Hanna monitored the tactical displays with professional satisfaction. Each red dot on her screens represented a Darwin subject in active operation. Each data stream showed successful engagements with Coalition forces. Her enhanced humans were not just winning individual battles, they were teaching the entire occupation army to fear the darkness, to question every shadow, to understand that Earth had become a place where predators ruled and prey trembled. The occupation was crumbling, one terrified patrol at a time. The real war had finally begun. The morning sky above Seoul was clear for the first time in over a year. No Coalition warships cast shadows over the ruined city. No alien fighters screamed through the atmosphere on patrol missions. The last transport had lifted off 3 hours ago, carrying the final survivors of what had once been the most powerful occupation force in galactic history. Admiral Kim Subin stood on the observation deck of what remained of the Seoul Command Center, watching the distant points of light that marked the retreating Coalition fleet. Her uniform was different, now not the simple clothes of a defeated officer, but the crisp dress uniform of someone who had never truly surrendered at all. The surrender ceremony 8 months ago had been theater, every word carefully rehearsed to buy time for the Darwin Project to complete its work. While Coalition forces celebrated their victory and settled into occupation routines, humanity's real response had been growing in hidden laboratories beneath their feet. "Admiral," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Park Jamin approaching. Though it took her a moment to recognize him, he had been one of the first volunteers for the Darwin Project, a young soldier who had stepped forward when they explained what the transformation would cost. Now he barely looked human at all. His eyes had been replaced with sophisticated optical systems that glowed with soft blue light. His skin had a gray tint that came from the microscopic machines flowing through his bloodstream. When he moved, it was with the fluid grace of something that had been built rather than born. He was Subject 1, the first successful conversion, and the template for all who had followed. "The Coalition fleet has cleared the outer sensor ring," he reported, his voice carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. "Long-range scanners show them entering hyperspace at maximum velocity. They will not be returning." Kim smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Good. Let them carry their stories to the rest of the galaxy. Let them explain to the Coalition High Command how an entire occupation force was driven from a conquered world by creatures that used to be human. Across the galaxy, those stories were already spreading. On Centauri Prime, the Coalition's military headquarters, terrified survivors gave reports that sounded like nightmares. They spoke of enemies that could change color like living paint, that could survive in vacuum without protection, that could analyze alien biology with just a touch and know exactly how to kill most efficiently. On Vega Station, a merchant captain, who had been on Earth during the final weeks of occupation, told customers about creatures that hunted in perfect silence, that could hear conversations through meters of steel and concrete, that seemed to know what you were going to do before you did it yourself. His stories emptied the bar and sent traders scrambling to cancel any routes that passed near human space. The tales grew in the telling, becoming legends of terror that made even veteran Coalition soldiers think twice about assignments in human sectors. Earth had become a forbidden world in the minds of most galactic citizens, a place where evolution had taken a dark turn and produced predators that understood their prey better than the prey understood themselves. Dr. Park Jinwoo emerged from the underground facility that had been his home for 3 years, leading a group of figures that might once have been human. 47 Darwin subjects had survived the transformation process, their bodies and minds altered beyond recognition. They moved with synchronized precision, their enhanced senses sharing information through quantum-encrypted neural links that made them more like a single organism than individual people. The Coalition survivors will warn other species, Dr. Lee Hanna observed, checking her datapad as she joined the group. They'll tell the galaxy what happened here, what we've become. Admiral Kim nodded, her expression hard as steel. Good, let them spread their stories. Let every species in the galaxy know what happens when you try to cage humanity. Let them understand that we refuse to be prey. Park Jamin tilted his head, his enhanced hearing picking up radio transmissions from the edge of the solar system. The Coalition fleet is broadcasting warnings on all frequencies. They're telling any ship that approaches human space to maintain distance and avoid contact. Perfect, Kim replied. Fear is the most effective weapon we could ask for, better than any bomb or missile. These creatures we've become will haunt their nightmares for generations. The Darwin subjects spread out across the observation deck, their modified senses turning toward the stars. To normal human eyes, they looked like monsters, pale, angular figures with glowing eyes and movements that seemed to flow like liquid, but they carried within them the determination and intelligence that had always been humanity's greatest strength, refined and focused into something the galaxy had never seen before. The war was never about territory or resources, Kim said, watching the last traces of the Coalition fleet disappear into hyperspace. It was about proving that humanity refuses to be conquered, that we will become whatever we need to become to survive. As Earth's new apex predators began planning their first hunt beyond the solar system, the galaxy learned a lesson that would echo through the centuries. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology or their numbers. It was their willingness to evolve, to change, to become something entirely new if that was what survival required, even if it meant becoming something that would terrify their own ancestors.